Hey, welcome into Cross My Heart Ministry. I'm Laura McFarland, and today I'm going to do something a little bit different with our introduction of our new bookmark for the next month. If you follow our channel, you know that each month we choose a new word, and then we have all the verses for the month that include that word. Well, for June, the word is honor. For the month of May that we're just wrapping up, we used the word prayer, and we highlighted 31 different prayers in the Bible. That was a little different as well because we had this whole passage to read and then challenged you to write one verse. Well, the topic of prayer and the topic of honor, it's interesting to see the juxtaposition of both of those words in light of everything that's happening in our country and in our culture today. And here's what I mean. When we're praying, and I hope that you were praying with me during the month of May, and we chose prayer and chose the month of May to showcase all those prayers because that was the month of the National Day of Prayer. And how interesting that in the month that we're all praying about the National Day of Prayer, we came out with heard this startling, amazing, unprecedented news that the potential exists for the court case Roe v. Wade to be overturned. And while I don't normally like to get political on my channel here, I think there are times that as Christians, we need to care about things that are happening in our government and in our culture. And I think that this is one of those situations. In my mind, life and the life of a child and the ramifications of what Roe v. Wade has done to our country, that's not a political issue. And in my way of thinking, that shouldn't even really be an inherently Democratic or Republican or conservative or liberal issue. It's an issue of life. And so as I sort of have a lot of things that have been bouncing around in my head as I try to process all this information legally. My response as a citizen, my response as a follower of God, a follower of Christ, and also our response to it. So I'm just going to talk about, again, the word honor and as it relates to this whole topic. And so I'm sort of just going to talk through some of the things that I'm thinking about, hoping it might give you some talking points as we as women of God respond to this with honor and with respect to those we are dialoguing with, but yet not shrinking back from talking about hard things as people of faith. We need to step up and let our voices be heard. We need to be respectful as we do that, but we need to be forthright and we need to speak the truth. And so when I think about honor, I have 5 honor points that I sort of want to share. I've tried to collapse a lot of information. I've written out pages and then kept collapsing to try to make it succinct enough to share with you in a video. So first, I just want to talk about honoring life and remind us that we honor life not because it's a political position, but because life is sacred. Life is a gift from God, and human beings are unique from all the other creatures that God created because we are created in His image. All the birds and the animals, all the beasts of the field, the fish in the sea, all of the rest of creation, all those things were created first, and then man and woman were the crown of His creation, created in God's image. And so because we're created in God's image, because the world was created for us to inhabit and to take care of and to steward, life has dignity. And because we are image bearers of Christ, we as Christians, as women of God, need to respect life and we need to respect others. And if we're going to hold a sign or send an email and advocate for life in the womb, we need to also be honoring and respecting life outside the womb. And so I think there's a challenge here for us to be sure that we're not only respecting the life of an unborn baby, but are we respecting the life of the elderly in our community, the life of what we might consider unintelligent or someone from a different socioeconomic status than us, the life of the immigrant, the life of the foreigner, any other person in our world, people we interact with in the public forum and out at the grocery store, who we see on the street, who we see standing by the street. Let's pray and ask the Lord to remind us that every person we interact with, no matter their age, no matter their skin color, no matter their bank account, they are all image bearers of God. And so as we advocate and believe in life, let's be women of faith who honor all of life. Second thing is to honor the Constitution. Now, when I taught history to my children, and we studied the Constitution, there's a story that when Benjamin Franklin came out of the Philadelphia courthouse, he was met by a woman who said, "What kind of government have you given us, Mr. Franklin?" Because the Constitutional Convention was convening and they were behind closed doors and they were trying to keep it under wraps, and as they hashed it all out and debated and dialogued and compromised. And when he answered that question to that woman on the streets in Philadelphia, he said, "A republic, madam, if you can keep it." If you can keep it. Well, we've been keeping it for 250 years. We have a democratic republic, which means we elect our representatives and then they vote and they make decisions on our behalf. But are we respecting the Constitution, and are we respecting that process? Because what I see and what I think Justice Alito has done so well in his opinion that has been leaked, and even that process has not been respected, because it's ironic that the Supreme Court, with the responsibility to uphold the law, the highest court in the land, has broken the law by allowing that case to be leaked. But I think one of the things that he's done very well is he's spoken to why it's a bad law, not necessarily addressing the morality of it, but why it's bad law. It sets a bad precedent. Because you see, any 4th or 5th grade student of American history that studies government can tell you that there's a checks and balance system, and you probably know about the 3 different branches of government. And so the legislative branch makes the laws, and the executive branch enforces the laws, and the judicial branch interprets those laws. And so there's supposed to be some tension. There's checks and balances on each one, with the ability to veto, and the ability to override vetoes, and the ability to be impeached, and the ability to render laws to be constitutional or unconstitutional. And so that check on one another keeps things at bay. It keeps one branch from flexing their muscles and taking more power than they are supposed to have. That's how it's supposed to work. Well, I think the case that Justice Alito makes in his opinion, and the way that I understand it, is that the Supreme Court in 1973 flexed their muscles and overreached what their assigned duty is. They created a right where none exists in the Constitution. And so the job of the Supreme Court is to interpret the law. They not only interpreted, they created a right that is not there. The right to privacy is not in the Constitution. And so by allowing that to set as precedent, that the Supreme Court can sort of manufacture rights where none exist, I think makes that bad law. And so just from a legal standpoint, it's not a good law, and so it needs to be gone. So we need to honor the Constitution. We need to realize that as civilizations and societies go, the United States is really still pretty young, and we think that we are just going to last forever, that nothing can override who we are. But if you study history, most democracies, most republics have come and gone. They sort of slide away, the rights erode. And that answer from Benjamin Franklin was right. We have a republic if we can keep it. And so keeping it means respecting the system, respecting the Constitution, and honoring those who are charged with the responsibility of keeping it, but also holding accountable those who represent us, whether it's at a local level or a federal level or a state level. Our elected officials, we need to pray for them, and sometimes we need to remind them who they represent, that it's not self-serving, it's not a popularity contest. They are representing the people that have elected them. It's their money they're spending, and those are the ones that they are accountable to. So we need to be good citizens by honoring the Constitution and by expecting those that we elect and those who serve us to honor the Constitution. So we honor life, we honor the Constitution, and then we honor the process. My daughter-in-law, Tori, from the time our oldest grandchild, Julia Grace, was 2 or 3 years old, I can hear Tori saying to Julia Grace, "Make a better argument. Use your words and make a better argument." When Julia Grace would whine for something or want something and cry or wail, Tori would have none of it. She would just say, "Make your case and make a better argument." And she taught Julia Grace to not whine or wail or lean into emotion, but to make her case. And so I had to chuckle a few weeks ago when Julia Grace and her little sister Charlotte got a new cousin. And so our son Luke and his wife Emily gave birth to precious little Ellie, and Julia Grace wanted to go and visit Ellie. So it was a couple of weeks before spring break, and she came home with a letter to her mom and dad, and it said something like this: "Dear Mom and Dad, I want to go visit my new cousin Ellie." And then here are the reasons. Number one, she is so cute. Number two, spring break is coming and we should go somewhere. And number three, I know that you want to see her too. Love, Julia Grace. Now, that's pretty amazing for a 7-year-old to come up with 3 good reasons, to lay those out, to write that out in the form of a letter. And I thought, you know, there are a lot of people in Congress that would have benefited from having been raised by Tori McFarland. There are a lot of members of the Senate that didn't have that benefit clearly from being raised by a mother that taught them to think logically and to present their case clearly. Because what I hear is a lot of clamoring to change the rules. Okay, so we didn't get our way, and so let's just stack the court. Let's just come to the president and tell him he needs to nominate 4 more Supreme Court justices. Let's flex from 9 to 13 so we can override this. Or let's just change the rules, the long-held rules in the Senate, and let's stop the filibuster so we can have the votes. So instead of making a better case, using their words to make the argument, to use the power that they have within the legislative branch, they just want to change the rules. So what's next? When you play Monopoly, are you going to pass go and collect $1,000 instead of $200? You know, we just need to play within the rules. There's a reason that those rules are in place, and if you don't win or you don't get your way, it doesn't mean that you change the rules. It means that you need to go back and use your powers of persuasion to make a better argument. Just ask Tori. So we honor life, we honor the Constitution, we honor the process, and then we honor the truth. And you know, when we wade through all the dialogue and all the debate and everything that's going back and forth, it's really a baby we're talking about. It really is a life. And we can argue any which way we want about the right of a woman, but this is a child. This is a life. And I just don't think that we need to... It seems illogical to me to use death as a way to solve a problem. I think that line of reasoning could lead us to say, well, if the prisons are overpopulated, then why don't we just go in and kill all those with life sentences, and then our prison population goes away. That's nonsense. We honor and respect life. We know that life has dignity. We respect and honor life. Taking a life makes no sense. And if we're going to take a life in the womb and we're going to respect a woman's right to privacy to do that, what's the difference between taking a life in the womb or having her come home with a baby and realize that this 3-month-old baby is crying and has colic and she's not sleeping and it's caused mental anguish, and so letting her take the life after the baby's born? That baby is just as helpless outside the womb. It still needs care. It has to have an adult to care for it. There's just no difference to me. I just don't understand. I just want to appeal from just a logical, common sense viewpoint why this is a life. This is a precious life. I think the abortion industry is into billions of dollars. And my sense is that a lot of these providers, most of these providers, really don't care about the mother. It is an economic business for them, and they're churning these women through with no thought to the long-term ramifications of what happens. I have a dear friend who works in a crisis pregnancy center as a volunteer, and she has relayed to me that any woman who comes in with a subsequent pregnancy who has had an abortion before has said every single time, I will never have another abortion. I will never do that again. It haunts me. I'll have to carry that the rest of my life. And you know, that's true. For a woman who had an abortion and thought that was going to make the problem go away, if that baby's due date was May 1st, every year on May 1st, she's going to remember, this year my baby would have been 5. This year my baby would have been a teenager. This year my baby would have been going off to college. It's a no turning back decision, because it's life that has been changed to death. And so not only does it take the life of the baby, but it really robs the mother of peace, because it's a decision that cannot be reversed, and it's a decision that she will carry with her for the rest of her life. And so as we honor this process, as we honor the truth, as we pray for the unborn, we must also pray for these women that are facing such decisions and are being told a lie that this will make your problem go away, it really won't make the problem go away. It will create a lifelong weight that is one that will have to be carried. There's an emotional weight that will be carried the rest of their life. There will be mourning every year on the day that the abortion happened, the day of the death, the due date. It's so sad to me, and I think we just need to love women well. We need to remove the stigma. We need to love young girls and help and encourage them when they make the difficult decision to keep that baby, to honor the lives of those women that find themselves in a difficult situation. And then finally, I think we need to honor our legacy as a country. I was in Israel back in March, 1st of April. What an incredible trip for me. You're going to start hearing stories about that bubble up into some of my teaching. But one of the places that we went, we were at the location where the idol Molech was worshipped, where there was a furnace, and where people in that time sacrificed children to this idol. And there was a furnace, and they had created a mechanism so that the child would be placed in his hands, and some sort of a mechanical thing would happen that would move his arms up as if he were accepting the sacrifice, and that child would be rolled into the furnace and burned alive. And our tour guide told us that when that would happen, the drums would be played very loudly. There would be a lot of chanting so that they could not hear the screams, so that the mothers could not hear the screams of the babies as they were, and the children as they were sacrificed to this false god. And it just makes us cringe to even think about that happening. And we look at that society and we think, what pagans, that they could sacrifice children to this false god. And we sort of judge them, and we look at that as just a dark time. And indeed, it felt dark and icy to me. It just felt repulsive. It just felt like evil as I heard my tour guide describe that, and I envisioned what was happening at that place where I was standing. And I wonder if our legacy, if there might be a time looking forward into the future that people look back at our society and they would say that was the time in American history when children were sacrificed on the altar of a false god. But the false god that we may lay that baby on the altar of is the altar of self, the altar of inconvenience, the altar of my career or my body, that I've worked hard to get in shape and this baby's going to destroy that. I've worked hard to get to where I am in my career. This is not a good time. This is going to make me have to drop out of college or high school, so my education is going to suffer. So whether it's body image or finances or education, those are all idols. And truly, an idol does not just have to be something that we bow down and worship physically. It can be other things that we value. An idol basically is anything that we place before God and we value more than God. So I hope today, as we prepare to enter a new month, and maybe you're going to be studying the word honor with me as you look up all of these, I hope that you will also be in prayer about this whole place that our country is in right now, as this monumental vote will be happening, and we'll be looking at overturning what I think is the travesty of Roe v. Wade. But as we dialogue and share and talk, I hope that we can be honoring and respectful of others, even as we stand firmly for the truth. I want to challenge you to be women who pray for, first of all, the unborn, who pray for our legislators, those in Congress and the Senate, and as well as in our local state districts, because what will happen next is this will go back to the states. But please also pray for our Supreme Court justices. They have been threatened. Their home addresses have been put out there. Pray for their safety. Pray that we would be a society that doesn't cycle back to violence when we don't get our way, that we would respect the process. Pray that we would be a society, individually and collectively, that honors life, honors the Constitution, honors the process, honors the truth, and then honors our legacy. And I think it begins with us. We are women of faith. We know the truth from the Bible, and we need to start looking at the culture and looking at society and looking at the world we live in through the lens of the Bible. And I think many of us have reversed that. I heard this analogy shared from a friend recently, and I love it. And she shared with me that sometimes we look at the Bible through the lens of the culture, rather letting the Bible allow us to interpret the culture around us and what's going on. If we are women of faith, it needs to affect everything about us. We don't just keep that cloistered away and pigeonholed and treat that as something private. It needs to change the kind of citizen we are. It needs to change our responses to issues and to other people. Not only how we respond or what we say when we respond, but the tone of voice and the way in which we do that. So would you join with me in praying these next few weeks as the Supreme Court decision is released, the response to it, pray for healing in our country, but most of all, pray that the gospel would go forth, because what's really needed, all these people that are injecting, if they don't know Jesus, if they don't know the Lord, then perhaps their vision is skewed, they're misguided. And so the gospel truly does change everything. So let's be women of prayer. Would you join with me in praying and praying that we would be women of prayer, but also women of honor as we face this issue individually and as a country. Thanks for hearing me out. For Cross My Heart Ministry, I'm Laura McFarland.